morning.
Good morning.
I bet you can't wait to hear this, huh? This stuff is a little gritty, and it's a little raw, and it's a little real. I'm really proud to be here on Social Justice Sunday to talk to you about this. I do have a lot of experience, and it probably shows in my years and my gray hairs that I just recently covered. So you can't really see. In coming to educate people around this subject, I come back to my notes from my internship in school. I was 35. I was living in Denver. I was going to the University of Denver Graduate School of Social Work, and I was placed at Urban Peak, which is, at the time, it was one of the only youth shelters in the entire country. We were modeling it after a youth shelter in Minnesota, and it was a crummy old house down on Ogden and Colfax. And I read a little bit of my journal entries earlier for our LGBTQIA informational, and I'm going to read a little bit more today because it really does solidify for me why I do this, why it's interesting, why it's necessary, and how incredibly difficult it is to try to help this population. If it were easy, it would be done already. And I went into this knowing it was a crisis, but I came out of it knowing that we had a long, long way to go after 10 years of working in this field. And we still have a long way to go. But we're getting there. There is evidence now that there are enough people in our communities that understand the problems, that are willing to tackle them, even though they're incredibly difficult to manage. The biggest problem being these are children. They have homes. They have a family of some type. And when they leave, there's a big, big, big reason. Usually it's emotional abuse because of some sort of issue in the home. Sexual, physical abuse is rampant in dysfunctional families. I have a boy living in my home right now, a young man, who is a friend of Macy's. And the only reason he's not dead, he told me this last night, is because of his friends in the theater group at Loveland High, who took him in, and he has moved 15 times in the past 4 years. This is a beautiful young man, talented, smart, and did graduate from high school. And I hope he comes to talk to you one of these weeks. He was going to come today, but I think he was really fearful, which just signifies how scary it is to talk about your past. Mm-hmm. I told him we have a very open and beautiful community of people, and he was still terrified to come talk. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor. He's staying with us now for however long he needs to stay until he gets on his feet. He still considers himself homeless, and he's 19. He has been on his own since he was 13, living with a very destructive family, and he finally just said, I can't do it anymore, and begged a friend of someone at high school to take him in, which they did. Luckily in Loveland we have that ability. But he's a rare, rare case. The majority of these children end up suiciding, moving, getting on a hippie bus and heading to California or somewhere else where they feel like they're going to be accepted and where they have some resources. Okay. When I read through these, I get choked up. And I don't want to get choked up right now, but I might. So this is an excerpt from walk out, where we would go out on the streets and look for kids. It just gives you a good idea of what we found. The youth at the shelter come from every possible background, representing the spectrum of socioeconomic levels, racial and ethnic backgrounds, spiritual perspective, sexual orientation, and mental capacities. They are the oppressed, the abused, neglected, gay, lesbian, trans, LGBTQ, Wiccans, alcoholics, drug abusers, artists, prostitutes, fetal alcohol babies, and AIDS victims. They are not even 18 yet. I find these youth to be gracious, intelligent, extremely sensitive, and warm, marvelous people. Their oppression has forced them to be incredibly resilient, to have many masks, and to create their own sense of friendship and love. They've done quite well considering their intolerable living situations. They are a strong lot and have taught me to appreciate and honor the difference between people, as many of them have done. They have also taught me to find the inherent beauty of each person's identity and the ability that love has to unite those who would on the surface appear to be vastly different. These children on the streets of Colfax are exactly like the kids that are here. They just aren't on Colfax, thank God. They walk out of their homes, they try to find a place to stay, and anyone that picks them up is not going to be a great person. They're going to end up like they do in Denver if we don't do something and find places for them to go that are safe. They will end up like the kids in Denver, and there are many, many. They prostitute themselves. They live with people who call themselves Wiccans. They have many different ways of falling into different cult behaviors, gang behaviors, anything where they feel included. These are children just like ours, exactly like ours, but they have no other choice. I remember hearing about some of them as they left Denver, and I would hear months later that they were killed, selling drugs in Houston. Different scenarios like that. It's really, really grim. This is not something that we as a society can turn our heads away from any further. We like to think, oh, well, they have a family, it's their problem. We like to think, well, the school's going to take care of it. Clearly, this school has not. They cannot if they're not in school. They can't do that. They fall between the cracks. We don't have support systems for them in place. Okay. One more excerpt. I spent last evening walking the streets on downtown Denver, looking for the homeless kids who visit the shelter during the day. We looked for them in parks, bus stops, and alleyways where the gangs do their tagging. I was paranoid and frightened as we set out at dusk to distribute our condoms and bleach kits. By the time we reached the park and visited with a handful of clients, my fear had melted into a deep sadness. The hard truth had finally become aware to me. The kids who I regularly see during the day really have nowhere to go. For some reason, this reality had not struck me so violently until that evening. There they were, all of them, on the streets, fighting for survival. They dress in street armor. It is their only defense. They talk about how tough they are and about their black belts. Some look as though they are unaffected by the prostitution, drugs, and violence. Others look scared and desperate and embrace us as we walk past. I am certain that we looked like a refuge in an insane environment. Some of them walked up to us to escape bad situations, which were in progress. The system that these kids live within is completely without boundaries. There is no sense of self-control, no direction, no models, not a shred of stability. They're searching for those things and more. I got the distinct feeling that there was a battle going on for these kids' loyalty. The kids have a choice of empowerment, us or them. The street people are enticing. They have money, power, prestige, and an occasional drug high. On the other hand, we can offer them hard work for minimum wage, painful introspective therapy, and strict rules. I thought about our class and wondered how possible it was to win the trust and the battle with these kids. I had so much work to do with them that it could not be started until they trusted me and they were responding to me. When the kids are at the shelter, they're united. They support one another. They are amazingly kind and gentle with one another and work well together to accomplish specific tasks. It was a mind-altering experience to see these kids outside of the context of the shelter. I could hear my professors in my mind telling me to meet the client where they are, which I'm sure she did not mean for me to take literally. However, in this case, I believe it is applicable and profoundly important. Now I understand the reason that the counselors at the shelter have such a difficult time trying to help the kids to become self-sufficient, much less self-determined and self-effaced. The task before me seemed more grim than ever as I made my way home. Expect ambivalence, I kept saying to myself. Lots of small battles win the war, I thought. My scope had broadened and my desire to give these kids an alternative way to go became imperative. Every social worker who goes through a graduate program has to pick something. And I happened to get lucky in that they picked me. And I'm hoping that somehow, some way, the work that I've done and the work that we are going to do together as a community is going to make a difference to this population of children. That was 1997. Today is 2022, and I stand here and things are exactly the same. So that's my message. I hope we can do better. I hope that I can be a part of that. I will help in any way that I can with the beautiful people of this church and others in our community to find solutions to this. Namaste.